Hello crafters, this is Yana Smakula. If you hear my cat meowing in the background, I do apologize. Welcome back to my channel. Today, even though it's still just August, I'm sharing a hot foil tutorial using etched dies to make a Christmas card. Spellbinders has just released a bunch of absolutely gorgeous holiday dies and holiday glimmer plates that are very much on trend and make fabulous Christmas projects. I haven't had the chance to play with the dies yet. I have used the new Glimmer plates, and I do have a video coming soon. So today I wanted to do some die cutting and also show you how you can use your regular dies to create foiled effects on your Christmas cards. So you don't always need to use a Glimmer plate to foil. The die I'm working with today is this Joy. It's an S4 die, if you are familiar with the Spellbinders die sizes. So it's not a small set, but also not one that's terribly large or terribly expensive. The Joy comes with an outline die, and this is what I'm using here to foil with. There are also separate dies in that set that will cut the word Joy, as well as dies to cut poinsettias, holly leaves, branches, and berries, and I'll use all of them for this card. Right now, I'm just using the outline die, and I'm not going to cut with its help, but rather hot foil the outline on my paper. Now, this is Blue Lagoon cardstock from Fun Stamper's Journey. I've cut it to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I'm using my hinge method to position and attach the die exactly in the center of my panel. I explained this method in detail in one of my previous videos. I have it linked right here in case you've missed it or if you need a refresher. Having secured the Joy on the paper and having added the foil, this is in color polished brass. It's one of my favorite colors after gold, of course. I'm also going to secure these sentiment plates that read Merry and Bright on a piece of the same Blue Lagoon cardstock color that's already cut to a thin strip. Now, these glimmer plates, and these aren't dies, these are actual glimmer plates. They come from the new holiday sentiment set, and they are a great addition to the 2 previously released sentiment sets from Spellbinders called Everyday Sentiments. I can't get enough of them, and I use them for nearly every foiled project I make. Meanwhile, my Glimmer machine has been heating up and it's now good and hot. It's ready to go. I'm first going to foil the Joy outline. Now, and because this is a die, not a Glimmer plate, meaning it is actually a little bit thinner than the Glimmer plate, I need to add another shim to my sandwich to compensate for the lack of pressure. I typically like to have 1 cardstock shim when I foil with my Glimmer plates, and I always have that in between my plates. If you watched my videos, you might have noticed this green piece of cardstock. So I usually have 1 cardstock shim to have enough pressure. Here, I'm adding another sheet of cardstock to have best results. This is something that's different for every die cutting machine. So you might need to experiment with your machine to see how many cardstock shims you would need. You might need just 1. Maybe you'll need 3 or more. I don't know. You'll have to try and see. I've pressed the timer button and now I'm just waiting for the die to become hot enough to foil. I've brought my deep sea die cutting machine from Jane Davenport. I love this little beast. It's a very powerful machine, but also it's a very pretty machine, and I love having it as a pop of color in my craft corner. Okay, time to run the platform through the die cutting machine to apply pressure and, of course, foil. I'm going very slowly here. As always, there's no need to rush. And once I'm done, I plug the platform back into the docking station so that it remains hot for my next foiling projects. Let's check the results, and look, it foiled beautifully. I'm also going to place that Merry and Bright piece on the Glimmer. I'm removing that 1 extra shim, as this time I'm foiling with a Glimmer plate and I don't need to increase the pressure this time. Now, if you aren't comfortable using the hinge method to foil, you can always foil on a bigger piece of cardstock, as the Glimmer machine instructions suggest. Here, I've done that, and then you can just trim your paper to size afterwards. I often do this, but I also often use my hinge method. Use whichever method is easier for you. The Joy foiled absolutely perfectly on paper. I do have just a little bit of overfoiling here and there, but it's easily fixable with a sanding eraser. Okay, the Glimmer is once again ready, and I can foil the Merry and Bright and begin putting my card together. I also ended up having a little bit of overfoiling on the Merry and Bright. I think I kept the plate warm for a bit too long, but again, this is easily fixable with a sanding eraser. Now, this Joy die comes with additional Joy letters that you can cut out and layer over the background. I'm using gold mirror cardstock, and you'll also see me use gold glitter cardstock to die cut these letters. Once this is done, I'm using foam adhesive squares to foam mount the letters in place over the foiled outlines. I used scissors to cut squares to thin strips to make sure that the squares won't be visible under the die cut letters. Now, there are also foam adhesive strips available out there. I don't have any on hand at the moment, so I'm using what I have by cutting the large foam adhesive squares into 3 or 4 piece strips. But if you do have the foam adhesive strips, they would work much better here. Now here's that other panel with the gold glitter die cut letters. They both look fabulous when combined with the Blue Lagoon cardstock. One of my favorite ways to dress up simple card designs like this one is to add some ink blending. And so I've picked 2 colors of ink, Blue Lagoon, it's the same ink color as the paper that I have foiled on, and another color is Huckleberry Fusion. Both are from Fun Simpers Journey, and these are the colors that I will use to do my ink blending. First, I'm going with the same color ink as the background, so the cardstock color is Blue Lagoon, and I'm ink blending it with a Blue Lagoon ink. I'm going all the way around the panel, and I'm bringing the ink just barely overlapping the foiling. I don't want to add too much ink, as I'd much rather keep the center area light. I should have done the ink blending before I foam mounted the letters, but I'm actually glad that I'm doing it now once the letters are there, as they are sort of a stopping point for the ink blending tool, and they won't allow me to go in too deep into the center of the panel and blend too much ink, as sometimes I tend to get carried away. Now, to protect my fingers from the ink and also to protect the foil from being picked up with my fingers, and that does happen, I've added a piece of sticky tape. It's a sticky side up, and I'm using it as a finger protector and also paper holder. With the ink added around the edges, the center section of the panel really glows. I'm also using the darker blue color and just barely touching the edges of the panel to darken them. I don't want them to be too dark. If I wanted to, I could have also added black, but I don't want them to be too dark, so I'm not adding a lot of ink. And the ink will actually become less dark and less vibrant once it dries. So it's not going to be as dark once the card is ready to be gifted. With the ink blending done, I'm going to measure the width of the sentiment panel, trim it to a size using scissors, and also make little V-shape ends. I want to position this going across the card, partially covering the letter O. Now, because the letters have been adhered using foam adhesive, if I use the same thickness foam adhesive for the banner, it's going to have a very slight curve in the middle where it goes over the letter O. I don't want it to curve, so instead I'm using thicker adhesive to pop this element up. I'm also using black adhesive so that it won't be as visible on the card. Generally, I prefer to use dark color foam adhesive on dark background and light color foam adhesive on light backgrounds. I don't always do this, but I do try. With the banner securely foam mounted in place, it's time to embellish the card. I have already die cut the flowers and leaves from red and green cardstock. I use candied apple and fresh forest cardstock from Fun Simpers Journey to die cut all of these pieces. My idea is to cluster the elements in 3 sections, one next to each of the letters, to add some pops of color to this card. I didn't show this on video, but I used a stylus tip from my tool-in-one, the largest one, to shape all of the die cuts, as I didn't want them to be flat. It's super easy to do on a foam mat. Now, if you don't have the stylus or you don't have the foam mat, you can also shape your die cuts with your fingers, but it is much easier to do with a stylus. I used glue to adhere everything in place except for the red flowers. For those, I used foam adhesive to pop them up next to the letters. I also added gold flower centers to the red poinsettias and even some red berries onto some of the branches. Once my background was adhered to A2 card base, I also used Nuvo drops in Morning Dew and coated the berries as well as the gold flower centers on the poinsettias. For the other card where I had the mirror gold cardstock letters, I also added some gold glitter die cuts to add some shine to the card. I skipped adding Nuvo drops but added jewels in 2 colors from Pretty Pink Posh instead. I personally love both card options, but I'm curious to know if you prefer one over the other. I hope you enjoyed this video and will give this idea a try. It's super fun to foil using your dies and the results are always fantastic. If you do make a card inspired by this video, you know the drill. Share and tag me. I love seeing what you guys are making. If you're new here, do subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified about every new upload. On the screen, there are a few other videos you might like to watch after this one. Love you guys. See you next week.